Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to the desktop for yet another retro RPG. And this week I'm continuing my journey through Dungeons & Dragons as I'm GMing it again after a break of 30 years, so my interest has been piqued. And we've reached 3rd edition, so this week I would like to present this. A very shiny cover and picking up every light in the room, but the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. Core Rulebook 1. So this is a 3rd edition Player's Handbook. It's not going to be a vast amount different from the other Player's Handbooks, but I think it's an interesting wee look through. Obviously, by this point, Dungeons & Dragons had gone back to being Dungeons & Dragons, whereas 2nd edition was Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. That was all down to a Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson dispute, because although the two of them designed Dungeons & Dragons back in the 70s, Gary Gygax owned the company. So Dave Arneson had rights to the Dungeons & Dragons game and was getting paid for every copy sold. However, Gary Gygax didn't want that, so Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was done as a derivative, and they split the product lines. So while Dungeons & Dragons kept selling and Dave Arneson got some money for that, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons was nothing to do with him, or at least that's what TSR and Gary Gygax claimed. So he never got any money from that. When Wizards of the Coast bought over TSR, they didn't want to keep up with the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons name. They wanted just to go back to Dungeons & Dragons. So they contacted Dave Arneson, came up with some agreement, which he sold the name to them in exchange for payments for all the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons stuff he'd missed. He was extremely happy, they were extremely happy, and we got Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. So let's start on the back cover. The Key to Endless Adventure by Jonathan Tweet, Monty Cook, and Skip Williams. Here is the indispensable manual of fantasy role-playing. The Player's Handbook includes everything you need to create and play your ideal Dungeons & Dragons character. Pick up this book and join the millions of other players who have made D&D game the world's most popular fantasy role-playing game. Now, something I'd like to pick up is not only is this a D20 system, because that was something else they introduced, but this cover, that's actually a real model book they made. They got somebody to make all these fancy hinges and encrust it in gems and all that, and then they photographed it. I would always assume for years and years that it was some very fine artwork, but nope, they got it made and they got it photographed, and it's a very pretty cover. Now, what I was saying about the D20 system is to make Dungeons & Dragons more accessible. What Wizards of the Coast did was they opened up the system. So the basic rules was released as the Open Games license under the D20 system. And people could license that system and make other games, or use the free version of it, which included some very, very basic things. So we got a lot of spin-offs of Dungeons & Dragons, people recreating the 3rd edition rules without Wizards of the Coast permission, using the OGL version of the rules. And we got lots of other role-playing games, some of which I've covered in the past. Farscape, there was a version of Call of Cthulhu. In fact, in the early 2000s, everything came out, which was D20 based. They republished everything. Deadlands, which I've covered, the Hell on Earth game, they brought out the base Deadlands game as D20. As I just said, Call of Cthulhu, just everything. And to tell the truth, D20 is not suited to everything. It is Dungeons & Dragons. It's not the most flexible game system in the world, but to exploit the flexibility of the system, sorry, that's phrased completely wrong, to exploit the fame of the system, everybody released everything as D20. So let's open the cover. And we get a nice inside with some aged pages. Everything looks very nicely done. The typesetting and the production values are fantastic by this stage. This came out in the year 2000, so we're well into DTP, and the quality is really, really here. It's beautiful. So we've got character creation basics, selecting feats and all that, your ability scores, detailing what those are, and going through the scores and the modifiers available for them, Abilities: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. The basic 6 stats. And different methods of assigning and generating them. Then we've got the races, which are very, very, very nicely set out. Although my personal favourite remains the first edition Shadowrun, which had the Shadowrunners in boxer shorts standing in different poses, very much like the Leonardo da Vinci picture, The Vitruvian Man, where you get them sketched out so you can see the different sizes of them. Here we've got some very nice pictures so we can see the size of the different races in comparison, because I would assume that half-orcs were a lot bigger than humans, but you can see they are an inch or so taller, whereas elves, as I mentioned before, in Dungeons & Dragons, elves are actually quite small in comparison. And we've got the gnomes and the halflings and dwarves. And we can see the size of the races. We've got the males and the females. I love this layout. It's very nice. It allows you to get a real concept of what your character is going to look like in comparison to others. We've got the details about humans here and the racial traits. We've got dwarves showing the construction of their skulls, how they plait their beards. Human, half-elf and elf features, we can see how they vary. We've got gnomes, half-elves, we skipped past the elves already, half-orcs, halflings. And that's the main races for 3rd edition, just the kind of standard fancy races. So, halfling racial traits, +2 dexterity, -2 strength. Halflings are quick, agile, and good with ranged weapons. Small. As small creatures, halflings gain a +1 size bonus to armour class, +1 size bonus on attack rolls, and +4 size bonus on hide checks. They must use smaller weapons than humans use, and their lifting and carrying limits are 3/4 that of medium-sized creatures. We used to joke that they are small and agile, so they are more difficult to hit. So halflings are small, but they gain bonuses from that built into the system. And then we're on to the classes, and we go through them. We've got basic information about them, saving throws. One of the big changes in 3rd edition was the fact that everybody uses the same experience table. Experience and level dependent benefits, so we can see how much experience it requires to go to each level. Whereas in 2nd edition, they tried to balance things out by varying the amount of experience. So certain classes would level faster because they weren't seen as advantageous as the others, whereas the mega powerful classes would obviously level a lot slower. So fighters would level faster than rangers and paladins, for example, because rangers and paladins get spells and godly powers and all that, whereas fighters can just hit things. But 3rd edition balances that all out by adding feats and abilities, so all the classes are supposedly equal. Now, what classes do we have? We've got the barbarian making a reappearance from 1st edition. They gain abilities to rage and gain uncanny dodge and damage reduction. These will sound kind of familiar to anybody who plays 5th edition. We've got bards. Now, bards get spells of various levels. Let's keep going through. What have we got? We've got clerics. Clerics are still clerics. We know what they're like. They gain spells. They follow gods. It details some deities here. We've got druids. Druids gain nature sense, wild shape once per day at 5th level. Going up to wild shape huge. Wild shape elemental 3 times a day. And their spells are detailed. We've got fighters. Now, fighters don't really gain many special abilities, but they gain bonus feats, making them one of the most flexible classes in the game. We've got monks, with their unarmed strikes, slow fall, diamond soul, abundant step. We've got paladins, who haven't changed a lot. We've got rangers, who gain their track and favoured enemies, as well as spells as usual. We've got rogues, which are the replacement for thieves. Sorcerers. and wizards. And that's our classes. We don't really have anything too much fancy in there. Then we're on to skills, which have replaced the non-weapon proficiencies. And although you can get certain skills, anybody can pick up any skill, really. As certain classes, you get advantage, so class skills, so you can buy them up, whereas non-class skills or cross-class skills cost more to buy up. But you can have any skill you want, it just costs you more to increase them. Using skills, then the skill descriptions. Let's flick through these. We've got hide. And because these are skills now, any character can get them. Open lock, move silently. So if you want a paladin who can pick locks, then you can buy it. It's going to cost him more than the thief who wants to buy it, but you can have a paladin who picks locks now. Search, speak language. That lovely picture of elf smoking a cigar and it blowing up in his face. We've got spellcraft, we've got swimming. And then we've got feats. Feats were introduced in 3rd edition as a more flexible way of adding abilities. And adding some flexibility to combat rather than just hitting things. So we've got a list of feats here. We've got alertness, ambidexterity, armour proficiencies, blind fighting, dodge, endurance. I'm trying to see the useful ones. Have we not got cleave in here somewhere? But these are abilities that the fighters gain, or all classes gain, not just fighters, but the characters gain, and they add a lot of flexibility to the character. So ambidexterity takes away disadvantages for using your offhand. Alertness. Well, let's read it up. Alertness, your finely tuned senses. You get a +2 bonus on all listen checks and spot checks. So you get an instant bonus to some of your skills. We've got brew potion, where you can create potions. Cleave, you can follow through with powerful blows. If you deal a character enough damage to make it drop, you get an immediate extra melee attack against any other creature in the immediate vicinity. Combat casting, so you get a +4 bonus to concentration checks to cast a spell while on defensive. Create rod, deflect arrows, dodge. And there's a lot of interesting feats in here, and everybody gets feats. Unlike 5th edition, where you can choose to get feats or you can choose to improve your attributes, everybody got the attribute bonuses and everybody got feats. They were kept separate, so everybody would gain some of these abilities, whether you like them or not. Power attack, where you can take points away from your attack roll and add it to the damage. Quick draw, you can draw your weapons with lightning speed. Spell mastery, described on page 54. Okay, that's not helpful. Toughness, you gain +3 hit points. Tracking. 2-weapon fighting. So we've taken the 2-weapon fighting, which was absolutely natural for every ranger in 2nd edition, and we've moved it into a feat. So if the paladin or the standard fighter wants to fight with 2 weapons, there's an ability here for them to do it, and they can do it as well as the ranger. There's no natural ability that rangers just happen to be able to fight with 2 weapons. What we've got here, description of the alignments. So we've still got the 9 alignments. The grid of lawful, neutral, chaotic, good, neutral, evil. Got various gods here. Vector. Looks, personality, and backgrounds. Customizing your character. Equipment. And the standard huge variety of different weapons and things. All nicely drawn out so you can see what they look like. Armour. Again, all nicely shown. Standard equipment. Up to weapon, carts and wagons. Different types of horses. So your halfling's riding dog. We go into detail on how the combat works. You get attacks of opportunity and what they call But basically the rules had gone over to a more miniatures based. You can see from the drawing that basically this was intended more as a miniatures game, so you could see where you're threatening characters. Flanking, that was the word I was just looking for. When you're flanking enemies, whether you've got attacks of opportunity because you're moving past a character and they can hit you. And all of that was added in, which didn't exist in 2nd edition. There's a lot more in 5th edition, but this was the start of that. And we can see ranged attacks, threatened area and flanking. A lot of the artwork that we saw last week in the conversion guides obviously came from this book. Injury and death. Disabled, dying at -1 to -9, dead at -10 hit points. Yes, in 3rd edition, if you've got less than 10 hit points below 0, so you were at 1 hit point and you took 12 hit points of damage, you were dead. There was no saving throws to keep yourself alive until somebody could treat you, and then you could bounce back. Receive that damage, you dead. We've got healing, temporary hit points. We've got scales, which became a real thing. So basically, the scales, you got advantages to hit as things got larger, but they got bonuses to damage, I believe. So dragons are obviously much more massive, so anybody can hit them with an arrow, but they're going to shrug off the damage. Combat modifiers. Grappling and disarms. Some detailing of adventuring. And then we're into the magic section, where we've got concentration and a lot more things like counter spells, how caster level works, special abilities, necromancy. We detail all the levels of spells. So we've got the bard spells here, we've got the cleric spells, briefly covered so you can see what spells your class has. You know, you're a 9th level cleric and you've got access to these spells, or rather 18th level. Ranger spells, druid spells, sorcerer and wizard spells. And then we get into the spells themselves, which are just laid out alphabetically. So if you're looking for fireball, you're just going to be turning to Fs. Flip, flip, flip. Fireball, fire seeds, fireball. And we've got it detailed there. It's easy to find. We've got charts to show how the blast radius of a fireball works. It goes through doorways, but it doesn't go through walls, so people are unaffected if there's a closed door between them and the centre of it. And it's all very nicely laid out for miniatures play. I'll flick right through these, because we don't need to detail all these spells, because there are so many. And we're up to the W's. And then at the back here we've got the appendices with rounding fractions, multiplying, detailing various terms, like melee's in there. Then we're on to the index. We've got a character sheet and a huge list of playtester credits. Let's call somebody out. Robert Parker, thank you for playtesting it. 2000 Survival Kit. You've pored over the spells, played out the combats in your head, and dreamed up 1,000 new characters, but the Player's Handbook is only the first of 3 core books for Dungeons & Dragons game. Dungeon Master's Guide, available in mid-September 2000, gives the DM all the tools to create and run fantastic D&D adventures. And the Monster Manual, available in October 2000, offers more than 500 fair and foul creatures. But until you've got your hands on these books, you can put your new D&D characters through their paces with the monsters, magic items, and rules we've provided here. Consider this the final chapter a temporary substitute until the Dungeon Master Guide and Monster Manual are available. We've considered many of the rules, we've had to leave a lot out, but what remains should give you enough to start D&D adventures of your own and give you a taste of what's to come. So it details what's in the books and goes through some monsters here. So we've got a mature adult red dragon, gelatinous cube, ghouls, goblins, hellhounds, ogres, skeletons. And it goes through detailing some magic items, what treasure can be found, just to get you started. Magic rings, magic weapons, the do-it-yourself dungeon, so you can randomly roll up what's in rooms. 12. A human rogue 3rd level, neutral evil alignment, has 1,500 in equipment. You can roll traps, just a quick start, and there's a rough map. And finally, we have the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition character generator, which they've included. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this disc in, and I'll boot it up, and I'll see you in the desktop in a minute. And that's us over at the desktop, and this is the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition character generator, demo version 1. And it looks pretty good on the screen capture, I can see, but on my actual desktop it's stretched out of proportions because obviously I've got a widescreen monitor, and this program in the year 2000 was not designed for widescreens. But it's still installed perfectly on my modern machine and seems to work pretty well. So let's create a new character. So we're creating a standard character, prestige class, a monster character, or a starting package character. Well, let's start a standard character. We've got Carrick of Hornwood, a human. And we can select from the basic races here. Let's change to an elf. We've got the alignments here. Chaotic Good Elf. And we've got various classes down here. Now we drag and drop them. So let's drop him in as a ranger, fighter. And we can up him in levels. So let's take him up to 5th level ranger, 3rd level fighter, just to give us a wide range of feats and things that we can add. And we click accept. So we've got some stats here, strength 14, dex 16. I'm guessing we can re-roll by clicking on this. Let's try. Yep, let's roll. But it won't let us accept it. Check that box. Oh. Okay, maybe that doesn't work. Maybe I'm missing instructions or something. Apparently we can't re-roll here. Now we've got his path through character generation here. We've got the standard racial features already added. Favoured multi-class wizard. His experience, size, weight, height. Ranger elf. 5th, 8th. What? Okay, I don't quite understand what's going on. Let's go in here. So he has 32 skill points. So we'll just drag some across. We're not making a particularly detailed character here. So we got wilderness lore. How high can we take up his skills? Oh, we're burning through all his skill points very quickly here. There, we've burnt through all his skill points. And we've got cross-class and prohibited skills there. So we've added his skills. We've got feats. He has 3 feats and he already has tracking. So let's give him some dodge. Let's give him some leadership. And let's give him 2-weapon fighting. And there we've blown his feats already. Okay, what's this? Languages. He has Common and Elven already. He has no extras. Class features, sorry. Oh, my screen capture seems to have caught my mouse doing something weird at the side. I hope you can ignore that up there. So he's got favoured enemies. He's got 2. So humans and orcs. It doesn't really matter. What we got here? Spells. He has 1 1st level spell. Pass without trace. Can we add that? Okay, we don't seem to have anywhere to drag the spells across. Okay, don't know how that works. He has a lot of gold. Let's give him an orc double axe. What else we got? Armour, a chain shirt, shield, buckler, goods, a bedroll, and a nice winter blanket. And it's taking us all off. It's allowing us to do shopping very nice. Oh, he has a spyglass. We've got equipment. Don't know why it says double there. Plus we got armor shield, his chain shirt, and his buckler. He's got an explorer's outfit, tail hair color, other bits. And then click here to save or print your character or exit the program. So we can save, print, go back to the main menu, and go back to editing. Oh, we don't want to save him. And that's character editor, or character generator, which was free with the game. That's not bad. That's a pretty decent add-on. It's obviously not as good as D&D Beyond is, but that's pretty decent, especially for 19 years old now. Well, that was the Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons character generator, which came free with the 3rd edition Player's Handbook. And that was surprisingly good. I noticed after shooting that clip of video that I totally missed out adding all the fighter feats and fighter skills. It totally treated them differently. There was a little drop-down box at the top which I'd failed to click and select to switch between the two classes. So as you gain levels in different classes, it keeps them in their own separate pockets. It's not that you get a bunch of feats to choose from for whatever you are. Annoying that I only picked that up after shooting the video, but there you go. And that's the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition Player's Handbook, Core Rulebook 1. It's an absolutely lovely presented book. The 3rd edition rules were absolutely rock solid, leading to much of the old school revolution, or whatever they call it, of 3rd edition spin-offs, and the reason Pathfinder continued with 3.5 edition rather than going on to 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. A very good version of the game, far simpler than the 2nd edition. Although there's a lot I love in 5th edition, this is rock solid, I have to say. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thank you very, very much for sticking with me through it and watching all this way. Please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing, but most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye.